Welcome to Ask Win, everyone. And if you hear a little fangirl moment in my voice, and it's nothing to do with me, although I did have a small emergency in my life go off this week, but the small emergency is getting taken care of as we speak. CP, cerebral palsy, kind of got in the way of the way I run this podcast, and it also got in the way of books. What happened is one of my aides decided to quit, and I need full-time help, and so I'm in the process of finding another aide. So, yeah, thank you for all the love and support, but that is not my quick programming announcement. My quick programming announcement is everyone who's listening to this podcast in their earballs or in their Apple headphones should go subscribe to Love Your Work, because I have Mr. David Kadavy with me, and Mr. David Kadavy is calling from Colombia, believe it or not, and we're going to find out why he moved to Colombia. So I'm going to let Mr. David take it away.
Wow. First of all, thank you so much. It's an honor to have to be on the show in the first place, but for you to tell everybody to go subscribe to my show, that's a huge honor as well. So I guess I am calling from Colombia. I do live here. I've been here the last 2.5 years. How I ended up here, I guess I was traveling. I spent a couple of different couple month spans here, and it started to kind of feel like home for me. And then a couple of years ago, I really came to the realization that I really wanted to double down on writing, that I love to write, and I wanted to figure out how to do more of that in my life. Now, I saw living in Colombia as an opportunity to reduce my cost of living and have the challenge of learning a new language. And I also just found that I did better work when I was here. And so I went ahead and made the move. So here I am.
Well, your home is beautiful. I've actually been to your home on a cruise ship. This is before my spinal fusion people. So I went to Colombia when I was about 11. Yeah. And it's so funny because and people know this, the cruise ship company called it the Drug Hotel Cruise. I'm quoting them. It's not my words. It's the,
Sure.
It's the cruise ship company. So, when I went down there, that's the last time they let cruise ships go, because they didn't want to put passengers at risk. But your home country is so beautiful. Beautiful. Talk about green. Talk about rivers. Talk about the nicest people on the planet. And I know that some of them speak English. I know most of them speak Colombian, but talk about the nicest people on the planet. And they have nothing, but yet when tourists come in, they literally bow and scrape to the tourists because they want to make us happy. And so we go home and talk about your beautiful country. And so where were you living in the U.S. before you decided to say, I'm out of here, before the political climate got bad? Let's just face it, all political climate is bad here. And so where were you living in the U.S. before you said, I'm out of there, I had enough, let's get me out of here?
I grew up in Nebraska, and then I lived in the Bay Area for a few years, and then when I moved to Colombia, I had been living in Chicago for about 8 years. And at part of that time, I was kind of going back and forth.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you were a software designer, or did I get that completely wrong?
Well, no, it's definitely not completely wrong. It's hard to describe what I did. I guess I'm trained as a graphic designer. That's what my degree is in. And I
Okay.
worked for some startups. I worked for some startups in Silicon Valley as a web designer, and more on sort of the part of the website that you see, and less of the part that's in the back end that is handling the database and all that stuff. So I was doing a lot of that. And then I ended up getting a book deal to write my first book, which was called Design for Hackers. So it was teaching about the stuff that I was doing. And then I just strangely really enjoyed writing a book. and so that's what made me kind of change to being a writer.
So, okay. And I know you self-published your second book because the traditional publishing industry, which I'm about to go into, is, well, not quite yet. I start that journey of querying agents June 11th, but I do have a small publishing deal with a small independent press, and so I'm in a self-publishing
Great,
field.
Congratulations.
I know, thank you, but I know that the traditional publishing guild will eat me alive. I'm sorry, but they will. And so why did you not go through that process again, that painful, heartbreaking process again? Why did you say F-U-C-K this, and people know what I spelled? I don't want to go through this again.
Well, honestly, I tried. I actually pretty much when I first got down here in Colombia 2.5 years ago, I said, okay, I'm just going to get up every morning and write for a couple hours, and I'm going to make this book proposal, and I'm going to find the right agents for the type of book that I want to write and everything. And I spent a few months doing that, and then agents weren't into my book. And then I kind of revamped it and tried again, and they still weren't into my book. And I just started to come to this realization that I felt as I was writing those proposals like I was trying to be somebody else. I felt like with the traditional publishing of the big houses, I'm sure there's all sorts of different types of publishers, but a lot of traditional publishers, I kind of feel like, I've got to say I'm a Stanford professor, or that, I worked at this Fortune 500 company or something like that. And that's not me. I'm kind of a figure out my own thing, make my own path type of person. And I found that if I forgot about trying to please an agent, then suddenly I was doing writing that felt better to me and that felt more natural. And it turned out like, because I'm a curious person, because I picked up a lot of different skills along the way, I'm able to do everything that I need to do to self-publish. I can do the writing, which is an important part of publishing books, but I also can do the design. So I do the layout. I coded the Kindle book. The marketing. I've got some experience marketing things, and so I'm really enjoying the process of being able to publish my own books. And once I finally got over my own ego and self-published the book that I wanted to book, the book that I wanted to publish, the book that I wanted to write, in the last 6 months, I have now published 3 books. So
Wow.
A couple of them are short, or a couple of them are very short. One's 7,000 words, and I've got one coming out. Yeah. It'll be out by the time this conversation's out. I think that's about 5,000 words or so. And so I've just really enjoyed this process of rethinking books. I think like traditional publishing has an idea of what a book is, and that idea works for them, works for certain types of books, but books can be completely different. So that is a little bit about how I ended up self-publishing and why I'm enjoying it so much.
And, okay, so you decided not to go with you did, but they rejected your book. this point. You didn't say
Yeah, they did. And it
going,
was, you know, it's
into self-publishing completely without trying this again. You said, I'll try this again, but when they rejected your book, you said, after you said, okay, I'll just publish it myself. I have the skills to design a cover.
you know, to be fair, I didn't, yeah. I mean, to be fair, I hear stories about people who say, oh, I had 500 rejections before my book was published. You know, I had like 4 or 5. You know, like I had sent my book to a number of agents, and there was lukewarm response. You know, I got like responses from them at least. But at some point, I just kind of felt like, you know, this isn't me. This isn't the way that I want to do this. And who knows? I'm sure if I would have persevered, maybe I would have gotten a book deal. I'm sure I wouldn't have gotten to write a book that was as natural to me, or, you know, that felt like the book that I wanted to write. And you know, I probably would have sold more books by this point. But I'm really enjoying the process that I'm doing right now, and I think that it's the right one for me.
Yes, because you got to remember, when you go in the traditional publishing field, they take all your creative right away. So creatives like I and David, we give it over to, let's say, Penguin Random House, for example. If it sells, thank you very much. If the agent sells it, and so creatives like I and David don't necessarily like that, but we might as well try. We might as well try.
Hey, you know, in my first book, I just kind of got lucky. Like I wrote a blog post, and a publisher reached out to me, and I got a book deal, and it was a book that people wanted to read, and you know, so now I only now realize like how lucky I got with that. And it was, you know, it was an okay process. I like this process. I like this process better. I'm really having fun, and I enjoy the idea that I can come up with a book idea right now, and then, you know, 2 months from now, I can have a short book out about that topic, and people buy it and they enjoy it, and they're able to read it and finish it, which is great, because a lot of books these days, a lot of traditionally published books these days are basically a blog post with 200 pages of filler. You know, so it's just fun to do the books that I would like to read.
So, let's talk about your podcast, because how I stumbled across your podcast is I typed in the name of one of the titans in the self-publishing industry, that being creative, Joanna Penn of the Creative Penn. She also has a podcast. And you
amazing. I love that podcast.
Her, and you interviewed her, and I said, oh, this is interesting. You know, let me just hear this guy interview Joanna Penn. I didn't even know of your podcast until I typed in Joanna Penn. And so that was my first adventure with Love Your Work, and on the Love Your Work table. And I'm like, okay, I like how this guy's saying stuff, and let's stick with it. And ever since then, I've been avid listener every single Friday. I'm not kidding, every single Friday.
Well, that's amazing. That's such an honor. Thank you. And Joanna Penn, that was great having her on the show. I love her podcast so much. Anybody who is thinking about publishing or trying to decide between traditionally publish and self-publish, or she would say indie publish. She doesn't like the word self-publish, you know. I definitely recommend listening to her show. She doesn't. So valuable.
I know she doesn't.
Yeah.
And so why did you, if you don't mind me asking, why did you have her on your podcast? Was it because you were stuck publishing Hard to Start, or was it because you just wanted more knowledge, or was it because you just thought maybe Joanna Penn would say yes?
Yeah. So I think the second one, just having more knowledge, and this is really the reason why I interview just about everybody on my podcast is I'm curious about something. I think, well, I can learn something from this person. And it's a wonderful thing about having a podcast is you can invite the person on and you can promote their work, but at the same time, you get to ask them anything you want, you know. And so having that conversation with Joanna really made me think about some things about books differently. I'll give an example. One is that I was talking about how books aren't that traditional publishers have certain ideas of what books are, and that those aren't necessarily still true. And so Joanna pointed out that one reason books are the way they are, or like I say, a blog post with 250 pages of filler, is that makes the spine wider, and that used to be a way to have the book stand out on the shelf and have it, visible. And so she pointed it out to me in our conversation, and that has really ignited my brain since having that conversation, because it made me realize, like, these books that I'm publishing these, I have a couple that are, 40 pages long or something, and that book gets the same real estate on Amazon as War and Peace does. They both get an Amazon page, whereas if they were at the bookstore, War and Peace would totally stand out, whereas my book would just be like a little strip of blue or something that, you'd have to grab it and take it out of the shelf to even see what it was about. And so that was just one thing from my conversation with Joanna that really made me think differently. And that's the thing that I'm always looking for when I invite somebody on my podcast is what can I learn? What am I curious about? And I like to think that makes it a more valuable podcast for the people who are listening.
Yes, and I know last week you had a fan moment yourself because you got
Yes, I did.
the lead singer of one of your favorite bands on your podcast, and you had a fan moment yourself.
I have them all the time.
After this Columbia disaster, let's just say, he deserves a fan moment. So how was that when he said yes to you?
That was wonderful. I mean, I'm always, every single guest I ever invite, I'm always wondering, like, is this person going to say yes? And I don't hear back from all of them, but then there are some that I get like that, whom I'm really excited about. This was the person you're talking about is Tim Kasher from the band Cursive and The Good Life, and he's a filmmaker. He just made a film and made the soundtrack to the film too. And I'm a huge fan, and he has a ton of huge fans. But it's funny because, like, when I'm trying to tell my friends about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, Tim Kasher's on my podcast, and they're kind of like, who? But that's another great thing about yeah. That's another great thing about having a podcast is these people that you are a huge fan of. That sometimes there's somebody that you're a huge fan of, and not a ton of people know about that person, and you're a little starstruck to have them on, but they're more accessible than you think. And one of the great things about having those types of people on is that you're excited about this person. You get to share this person with a bunch of people who don't know about this person. And so Tim and I just had this amazing conversation with him about his career as an artist, as a musician, trying to decide, with his first album, should I be sticking to some kind of a musical genre? And then he's very well known for his for one of their albums that has a song called "Art Is Hard," where he's kind of making fun of being a songwriter, and I really got to finally pick his brain about that stuff 15 years after the fact. And so that was really an amazing feeling. And it's funny because I've had so many different podcast guests where I'm very nervous before the interview, and something magical happens though after you have that conversation with that person. I don't know if you've experienced this, Win, but maybe you really look up to somebody and you have a conversation with that person, and then afterwards it's like somehow you don't feel, I mean, the nerves are gone, but you kind of feel as if they have transferred a superpower to you in some way. I don't know if you've ever felt that way. I mean, what does it feel like for you when you interview somebody that you really admire?
Well, I think I'm going to feel that feeling after I hang up the phone with you, to be honest with you, because I was, as I said, and I hate the term fangirl here, but as I said, I stumbled across you and love your work because of Joanna Penn, so thank you very much, Joanna Penn. And I know she does a lot of interviews because she's one of the huge titans in the self-publishing industry. And so I know she helps a lot of people. And way back when, day one of this podcast, I had Joanna Penn on my podcast because I thought,
Oh, wow.
if I'm going to start a podcast, I might as well kick it off strong. And if you want to go look for it, just go look on my website. It's still on the feed. You guys can't find it necessarily in a podcast player because
So she was your first guest.
Only, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
She was my first guest to kick this podcast off strong. And so the podcast players only show, I think, 100 episodes, and so you can't go way back in the archives. But if you go look at askwin.weebly.com, which will be in the show notes, you guys could probably find it and click on it, or I'll ask my assistant to put another link up to Joanna Penn's interview so you guys can hear the first episode. Yeah,
you know she has a Facebook Live today, by the way.
She does, and you guys, I did know that, and she does have a Facebook Live, but by the time you guys hear this interview, it will be Friday. It will be 24 hours after, so you guys must go back and watch Joanna Penn's Facebook Live, because I'm not kidding. She is one of the titans of the industry, and go back and listen to the Creative Penn podcast, because, David, you're learning from the best. And that being said, if you had to be educated by anyone, who would it be and why?
You know, I think one of the guests that I've already had, Seth Godin, is somebody who I have been educated by a little bit, but I would love to be educated by him more. And fortunately, he does put his work out there for me to be for me to be educated by him. And I think the reason is because there's a lot of depth to his work. Like, his work comes off as very simple. But there is a lot of depth and knowledge behind all of it. It's kind of like there's this quote by Hemingway that the grace of an iceberg comes from 90% of it being underwater. And I think there's a lot of depth in Seth Godin's work, in that he understands history very well. He knows the history of business and the history of marketing very well, and he's able to tie these wonderful examples and these abstract ideas to today's technology and today's marketplace, whether you're marketing or you're writing books or something like that. And that's something that I really admire, because I really do think that there's a lot of value in following your curiosity, in learning about all the things that interest you, and that through going down that scary path, sometimes you can create things that are extremely valuable. And so that's why Seth Godin is somebody that I would love to be educated by more.
Yes, I definitely agree. And I would like to have you ask me a couple questions, and then we'll go into where can people find you stuff and where can people find your books. But if you have a couple of questions to me, you're more than welcome to ask them.
Sure. I love I love your name, Win. How did that? Is that like your given name? Is that a
Yes,
nickname? How did that come about?
that is my legal name because
Wow.
my paternal grandmother on my mom's side was named Win, and so she was actually named Pauline Winifred. I didn't realize this until she died, thank you very much, that Pauline was actually her given name, and then she switched her her given name Pauline to her middle name, and then she made it Winifred. Well, it turns out that she didn't like Winifred, so she shortened it to Win, W-I-N, and that's where I got my name, W-I-N.
So for her, it wasn't her legal name; it was a shortening. But then for you, it became your legal name. It just ran through the family.
Yes, correct. It
That's very
ran
cool.
through the family. Correct.
And you were saying that I think it was June 11th is when you're going to start querying agents. Is that right? Like you have a plan? You have the date set already for yourself? I thought that was interesting. You mentioned the date.
I have the date set for myself. My book is being edited as it's already been edited. The finishing touches are being put on it as we speak, and I have agents on my phone and query managers on my phone, and so once I get the stuff back to me, I'm going to start querying agents and see how it goes, and then if they decide to throw me in the trash can, I will use my small publisher to continue publishing my work.
Cool. And so you've already written the whole book. Is it a fiction book?
It's a new adult, yeah. I've already written the whole book. It's a new adult fiction book.
So, and you've written nonfiction before, so now you're going into fiction. What was that transition like?
I've written both. I've written nonfiction and fiction, and my original autobiography, I Come a Win, did really well, but people got so sick and tired of the story of cerebral palsy that they said, Win, you're a better novelist. I've had people tell me that. Literally. They go, you can come up with creative stories to put in novels like There's No Tomorrow, you're a better novelist than you are a memoirist. And so I've decided that my true calling is YA and new adult and all that stuff, novels.
Great. I mean, the sky is the limit in that genre. So, yeah. Awesome. I can't wait to see how it goes.
Memoirs, thank you for saying that. Memoirs, you kind of get stuck in. And I published my first book in October of 2012, and it did really well. I Come a Win can still be found to this day on Amazon. And, but I am now a novelist because that's my strong point, and I might as well stick with my strong point.
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Now, where can people find you, and how can they support you? I know you have a Patreon feed, and I know you give special content that, and I know you want people to support the Coffee Cup a Month and support the show, which I fully agree with. And where can people find you, and where can people get a hold of you?
Sure. I mean, yeah, they don't have to contribute anything. Just go check it out. Like you said, Love Your Work is my podcast. I put a ton of love. I put a ton of my being into it. and listen to it, see if it resonates with you. I think that anybody out there who's really looking to find that intersection between their love and their money Venn diagram, I think that they'll really find a lot of things there that help inspire them to become the person they want to become and to do the work that they want to do. Besides that, Kadavy.net, and on Twitter, I'm very active at Kadavy. So thanks so much for having me on the show, Win.
You are so welcome. And how I found you on Twitter is Drew Ackerman, who does the Sleep With Me podcast. And yes, it is a podcast that puts you to sleep. So for those of you that have insomnia, this is a terrific podcast to put you to sleep. And I'm actually inviting Drew to be on my podcast because he's one of the top podcasters in the industry. So I listened to Drew's. You tweeted out that Drew was on your podcast. I quickly followed up with you on Twitter because I could not find you otherwise. So
really?
Go check out Love Your Work, you guys. Go check out Love Your Work, and you will fall in love with it. And you can make money off your creative side. You can, you guys. You don't have to be stuck in these 9-to-5 day jobs unless you want to, and you can be an expat and move to Colombia. And David, I wish you the best of luck refinding your home in Colombia. The reason why I say refinded is because David kind of got kicked out of Colombia by accident. Not on purpose, but by accident. And so if you want to go listen to why he got kicked out of Colombia, go to his podcast, and he goes, notes, I got kicked out, now I have to move. The next thing I know, no, now I got back in as a tourist. Now I can stay, but it's a mess right now. It's a mess. So I'm surprised you didn't have to cancel this interview. But if you guys want to know more about David's journey, just go find Love Your Work, and Love Your Work is available everywhere, including the lady that can, aka Alexa. And I'm sorry about that because now Alexa is going off 1,000 miles a minute. It's saying name. So I'm sorry about that. You people want to kill me because you're like, when I had my Alexa all quiet. But I'm sorry about that. But go find Love Your Work and go find Love Your Work, and then go find David and support him, and just support the independent creators out there, you guys. And I hope you guys enjoyed another fabulous episode. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you so much. All right, we're done. Win, are you still here? Nope. Okay.